Hey everybody, so here's my next video that I'm doing for all of you. I want to talk about Vonnegut a little bit. I don't want to talk about him too much, but this year you all read Slaughterhouse-Five. Slaughterhouse-Five is among my very favorite books of all time, and it's maybe my favorite book to teach. It's well known, I have a tattoo from it, which is true. Now the tattoo serves many purposes for me. On the one hand, it is because of how much I love the book. It also has a couple sentimental things. I taught this book for the first time while I was a student teacher. It was my first time during my student teaching that I felt really capable and like I knew what I was talking about, which was really great. And during that time, my paternal grandmother passed away. And so having the quote of "everything was beautiful and nothing hurt" seemed extremely appropriate. I had just taught the book, I had just achieved a goal of mine professionally, and I had lost someone very dear to me. So talking about kind of loss and pain and grief, it seemed like the right thing to get that tattoo, and I don't regret it at all. I love that particular tattoo. It's one that really sticks with me. Tattoos, due to their permanence, should not be something that we take lightly, of course, but literature is a thing that we do take seriously. At least, we can. You don't have to, I suppose. Slaughterhouse-Five is great. Slaughterhouse-Five is Vonnegut's first real deal masterpiece. Now you could argue it's his second one. There's a book, a lot of my books are at the school right now, and I'm not at the school, so there's a book of his called Cat's Cradle that I would highly suggest you read if you like Vonnegut. It has a lot of the themes that are in Slaughterhouse about fate and destiny. It has ideas about science fiction, which he was initially labeled as a science fiction writer, although I don't think it's exactly accurate to call him that. More like speculative fiction might be closer to it. Anyway, Cat's Cradle is excellent. It concerns a made-up religion and the end of the world, and it's terrific. The made-up religion, Bokononism, is a really fascinating religion. I don't believe in it, certainly by any stretch. I mean, it's a work of fiction, but the philosophies in it are really interesting and really worth checking out. Now, the book after Slaughterhouse is called Breakfast of Champions. Breakfast of Champions is even more experimental and more kind of boldly experimental. It has a lot more of a flipping the middle finger to the world. If Slaughterhouse-Five is about fate and about war and how do we deal with grief and pain, Breakfast of Champions is about the belief in free will as a necessary thing to continue on. And instead of being about World War II, it's about kind of American society in the late 60s and early 70s. And about consumerism, our need to buy things. You'll recognize a lot of the world in it. It does have things that are pretty outdated in it. There's an African-American character in it who is not, I'm not sure how to phrase this one. He's painted in broad strokes. He's an incredibly sympathetic character, and he's actually one of my favorite characters in the book, but he speaks in a way that's a little uncomfortable for modern readers, I think. I think it's a little less than sensitive. However, we have to read things in the context when they were written. Vonnegut was writing when it was completely, not just acceptable to say that, because I would never be in a position where I'm excusing racist actions or thoughts. Vonnegut was not a racist. He was actually an extreme progressive. Right now, he'd be labeled as an extreme liberal. But the terminology and how things were portrayed at the time, even among progressives, those things have changed pretty significantly through time. So his top three that people usually talk about are Cat's Cradle, Slaughterhouse-Five, and Breakfast of Champions. But there's another favorite of mine that people don't talk about very much, and it's this book, Bluebeard. Bluebeard is excellent. It's his least experimental in some ways. It's his most traditional straight-up narrative. It concerns a character, you will notice this. So Kilgore Trout pops up in Slaughterhouse-Five, but he's in other books before that too, and he's in lots of books after that. Kilgore's kind of the doppelganger, the twisted version of Vonnegut himself, and he pops up in a lot of the books. Another character that pops up is Elliot Rosewater. He is in Slaughterhouse-Five. He's got a book of his own called God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, which is very good, although not among his best. But I do like that book. I do think it's very good. It's very funny. In Breakfast of Champions, there's a painter who's having a gallery show. He's celebrating his gallery show at the Holiday Inn where a lot of the events at the end of the book happen. And Rabo, in that scene, in that party, he's kind of a creep. He's kind of a jerk. He's very arrogant and he's very stuck up and condescending. And he's not very sympathetic. You read it and you kind of think he's a jerk. 25 or so years after writing that book, Vonnegut wrote Bluebeard, which is the story of Rabo Karabekian's life and why he is how he is. And it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. And Rabo goes from kind of a jerk in a bar to one of my favorite characters in literature and someone who I deeply love. And it's an interesting thing. When we think about fame, when we think about our interactions with people, when you hear a story of like a celebrity who's mean to someone who comes up to ask for an autograph, right? And they go, oh, well, they're such a creep. And maybe they are. Maybe they're a bad person. Maybe they're having a bad day. You know, we only hear the bad stories about people. We don't hear all the good things they do. We don't know if, whatever, you run into, we'll say Brad Pitt, right? Super famous. People talk to him all the time. I've actually never heard anything bad about him, but let's say something bad about him. Let's say someone goes up for his autograph and he's like, hey, man, go away. Bug off. I'm doing something. Like, what if he just gotten really bad news that morning? What if he was having an off day? What if he was just thinking about something else? What if he had a stomach ache and he had to go use the bathroom? I mean, I don't know. It could be anything, right? It doesn't mean he's a bad person. It means we saw him in a bad moment. And maybe in general in life, we should be more empathetic and extend more courtesy to people. Rabo is coming from extremely bad situations, particularly from the end of the First World War to the end of the Second World War, and he's been traumatized in many ways. And he comes up out of his trauma, dealing with it by becoming an artist. Now, there's a point in this book where Rabo he's in a bad marriage. He and his wife have 2 sons. They don't have any money coming in. He's struggling as an artist. He's an abstract expressionist artist. So his paintings don't look like anything literal. They're more, well, actually, they're kind of like this. I like abstract expressionism. This is a painting we collected a while ago from an up-and-coming artist. That painting there that you can kind of see the edge of, that's actually a painting by my wife. My wife is an artist as well. So there's these works. Rabo's work, I mean, I didn't pick it for this reason. Rabo's work is actually kind of similar to this, how it's described. It's sheets of color, fields of color with bands of color going across them up and down with pieces of tape. Anyway, so Rabo and his wife are having a hard time financially. And his wife kind of makes a crack at him of like, if you could actually paint or draw, maybe we could make some money. And he goes, okay. And he goes over to the fireplace where the fire has died down, it's just ashes and cinders. And he puts his thumbs into the ashes. He goes over to a blank wall, and he sketches on the wall with his thumbs portraits of his 2 sons who are sleeping in the other room. And they're perfect. They're absolutely exquisite, these portraits. And his wife looks at them in awe. He's done it in like 90 seconds. These 2 perfect portraits with ash on the walls, on the bare walls. And his wife's like, why don't you do that all the time? And he says to her, because it's too effing easy. He's excellent at doing exactly that thing. It's harder for him to express himself abstractly, and that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to push himself as an artist. Yeah, he can do this other thing. It would be easy for him to do it, but that's not what expresses him. He has to take on the bigger challenge. If that means struggling, then that means struggling, and he's okay with that. There's something really interesting in there about us and our lives. We can do what's easy, or we can do what's challenging and push forward and push further. That's worth thinking about. That's worth looking at. And this book is very much about that and about him, I don't want to say too much. It's about him creating his masterpiece. And what that turns out to be is a wonderful surprise. It's a beautiful book. I cry while reading it. I need to read it again. It's been a couple years now. I need to read it again. It's really lovely. So there's that. Then I want to talk about some other people you should read as well as you set off into the world. One of them is Annie Dillard. Annie Dillard, I think, writes the most beautiful writing in the world. I don't think anyone makes better sentences than she does. I don't think anyone understands imagery better than she does. Now, she writes fiction, she writes novels, and she writes nonfiction. She's better known for her nonfiction. I prefer her nonfiction. This is her most experimental book. It's called For the Time Being. I love this book. I think it's incredibly beautiful. It is strange. It has no... It's Dillard looking through things from history and science and painting these little like sketches of them together and trying to understand the world through these by weaving together these little bits of facts and history together. And she kind of combines poetry and religion and a lot of things. Dillard is a seeker religiously. She identifies as Christian, at least has most of the time, but she looks to all religions to try and find what she needs to think about and what she needs to do. And she's a very interesting, wonderful person. they're really neat. I almost don't want to read anything to you from this out of context because it would be, I don't know, it kind of ruin it a little bit, but they're very beautiful. There's actually another copy. I've had other copies of this with my highlights and dog-eared pages and all the rest, but I loan them to people and then they're gone. So I actually don't have many pages marked in here. Yeah, I need to reread it and mark this one up. It's really quite good. Anyway, so moving on. I got lost in that. I'm sorry. Dillard, I think, writes the prettiest sentences of anyone alive. Maybe the prettiest sentences of anyone ever. Those of you who are interested in such things in sentence structure and how we use devices, you won't see better than Dillard. I'm happy to talk to you about it whenever you want. Maybe I'll post a video on my own YouTube channel about it. This is Colson Whitehead. I think Colson Whitehead is the greatest living novelist. A lot of people would agree with me. In the last couple of years, his last 2 books have both won the Pulitzer Prize, which puts him in very rare company. It's Steinbeck, Faulkner, Colson Whitehead, and there's one more, but he's not super famous. He's kind of faded from history a bit. I can't remember his name. This is not one of his famous books. This is Zone 1. I have all of his books. I've read all of his books. His most famous are The Underground Railroad, which came out, it's not his newest book, it's the one before, and Jersey Boys. I'm sorry, Nickel Boys. Ooh, sorry. Jersey Boys is a bad musical. Nickel Boys. All of Colson's works are about the African-American experience in the United States and internationally, but they're about everyone at the same time. They're universal, and then they use their universal ideas to talk about the Black experience. They're beautifully written. They're heart-wrenching. They tend to be pretty high concept. Nickel Boys and one called Sag Harbor are his only ones that aren't high concept books. Zone 1 is a zombie novel. It's about a zombie infection taking over the world, although it's focused in New York. And it's amazing. It's scary, and it has action and zombie movie stuff in it. But it's not really about that. It's really about consumerism and consumer culture and things we buy. It's about community and identity. It's about the identity of New York City. And while I could not have planned it as such, and certainly he would not have planned it as such, it's very much a novel for right now, I think. Because the book focuses on New York and Manhattan, it's very, and it's about a pandemic spreading through the world, I can't help but think about what we're going through now and how we are and are not helping one another in this and what that experience is like. He's got another book, again, not one of his best known ones, but I think one of his best books, called Apex Hides the Hurt, which is about marketing and about race and how we communicate these things and how capitalism kind of exploits us. But it's also a really funny book. It's great. Those are my top ones for you right now. I have missed all of you very much. I'm so sorry I won't see you at Literature Live. I'm so sorry I'm not going to be at your graduation. I was really looking forward to it, to be honest. I was really, I was excited about it. I've reached out to many of you, those of you whom I have contact info for, to send you letters in lieu of being at your graduation. I don't have addresses for everyone, and not everyone has reached out to me. If you reach out to me with your mailing address, I will mail you a letter congratulating you and telling you nice things about you and telling you how much I miss you. I also say in that letter that now that you're leaving high school, when the world is back to some semblance of normalcy, I'd be happy to buy you and your friends or your family, I don't want anyone being uncomfortable. I'd love to buy you a cup of coffee and hear all about your adventures and ideas and what you have in mind for your future. Because all of you have extraordinary futures ahead of you. I'm proud of you. I love each and every one of you. Well, not the ones I don't know. If I don't know you, then I'm sure you're fine. Like, whatever. That's mean. No, I'm sure you're good. I'm sure you're not. I'm sure you're fine. If I don't know you, if you didn't have me in class, you're probably okay. I mean, you're not great. You're all right. But that's good, whatever. That's fine. Send me an email. I'll tell you I don't know you, and that'll be the end of the conversation. Okay. I am eager to hear what all you have going on and what you're up to these days. You're all the best. Bye.